Well before Nicola Sturgeon's surprise resignation in February, police had been investigating a long-running discrepancy in the Scottish National Party's finances. This morning, that investigation took detectives to her home in Glasgow to arrest her husband, Peter Murrell. Miss Sturgeon was not at home to see officers going through her garage and bins. Her spokesperson said this evening she didn't know in advance. Mr Murrell isn't just her husband, of course. He was the party's chief executive until 3 weeks ago. Miss Sturgeon's successor as SNP leader and First Minister, Humza Yousaf, who campaigned for her job as the continuity candidate, agreed it was a difficult day for the party. You don't say. He only won by a narrow margin, a result which might have been different had the leadership vote been held after today's events.
They were Scotland's most powerful couple for almost a decade. Now the home of Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell is being searched by police. Detectives arrived here around 7:30 this morning. Sturgeon was seen leaving a short time after, just before a search operation moved in on the property. But her husband, the former chief executive of the SNP, was arrested at the house, a suspect in connection with the ongoing investigation into funding and finances in the party. He has this evening been released without charge, but his house is still being searched. Police have set up an incident tent in the front garden. Every room in this property is being searched. There's even police looking through the back garden and the back garden shed. Items of interest are being boxed up and taken away. The investigation relates to more than £600,000 that was fundraised between 2017 and 2019, supposed to be used in an independence campaign. At the end of 2019, though, SNP accounts showed the party had just under £97,000 in the bank. There had been no referendum, so questions were asked about where the money had gone. Then, in 2021, Peter Murrell loaned the party more than £100,000 of his own money to help out with what was described as cash flow issues. A month later, Police Scotland launched their formal investigation into the SNP's finances after receiving complaints about how donations were being used. The SNP headquarters in Edinburgh were also raided today. Bags were filled with evidence for the investigation. The party leader, who just last week succeeded Nicola Sturgeon, was asked about today's developments.
I was told this morning after the event, and of course my reaction, as you'd imagine, much like anybody involved in the SNP, is that this is a difficult day for the party. But again, I just reiterate and emphasise it's so important for me not to comment on a live police investigation.
But opposition parties are calling for transparency in Scotland's party of government.
We need big answers about what has happened here. Of course, the police must be allowed to do their job, but this is a First Minister who already has demonstrated he has the wrong priorities. He is distracted by what's happening in his own party, mired in scandal, mired in division.
Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon married in 2010. He was SNP Chief Executive. She became party leader and First Minister, though he denied this was inappropriate.
She's been a minister for a very long time, and we just don't talk about it. Government business.
Together they delivered electoral dominance in Scotland, but in February Nicola Sturgeon announced she was resigning on her own terms. Then last month Peter Murrell resigned under pressure. He took responsibility for inaccurate press statements that falsely inflated the SNP's membership numbers. Today Nicola Sturgeon's predecessor gave his response to events in his old party.
Look, I led the SNP for a long time, so I'm very sad about what's happening to it. And indeed about what it's become.
Peter Murrell has now been released, but neither he nor Nicola Sturgeon have returned home tonight, while searches at their house continue.
And Peter is outside that home this evening, where police are still working, as you just mentioned, Peter. So, I mean, it's been pretty hard to keep up with all the dramatic developments in Scottish politics over the last few weeks. Where do today's events leave the SNP and Scotland?
Well, we know, first of all, that Peter Murrell has been released without charge, but this is still an ongoing investigation. As you can see behind me, a large police presence still at Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon's house, and neither of them have returned. And of course, it's been a difficult time for the SNP, as you say, after a bruising leadership contest. Now the new leader, Humza Yousaf, inherits not only the problems of rebuilding public trust that passed into his term as leadership, he now inherits the questions being asked about party finances. says this didn't happen on his watch, but Peter Murrell spent his day answering those questions in a police station. But Hamza Yousaf now will have to fend off these questions. He's promised that he will have a review of the party to try and improve transparency. He needs the public to trust the SNP to govern in Scotland. It's also important to stress that this is a time when the polls show Labour closing in on the SNP, and also Nicola Sturgeon herself would have rather that her legacy was focusing on tackling child poverty or how she's increased Scotland's standing in the international stage. Instead, these images will also be part of Scotland's former First Minister's legacy.
Peter, thank you very much.